What's going on, everybody? What's going on? What's going on? This is Leonard Miles, aka Two Degrees in the CDL, and we're gonna just get right into it. You see the title of the thumbnail: Truck drivers save money and achieve their financial goals. That's what it's all about in this industry. But I saw an article. I was just doing some research, and it was just talking about just the trucking industry. And the highs and lows that have happened in the trucking industry. Since the pandemic and even before then. So we're gonna get right into it. I'm gonna read the whole article, all the way through. I've already read it, prior to doing this video, but I'm gonna read the article and just give my thoughts to it. It was hard to escape the narrative during the pandemic that there was a severe shortage of truck drivers who could move goods from one place to another. In reality, the trucking industry has a retention problem. It has often struggled to find enough people to work a grueling job for low pay. But there are big downsides to the narrative that America doesn't have enough truckers, and they are becoming evident today. Demand for truck drivers has plummeted in the last year, and tens of thousands of drivers who entered the profession thinking it was a surefire way to earn a living are ending up deep in debt with no work. The shortage is just something the big companies make up, says Jacqueline Jolly, who entered trucking alongside her husband as their work in the construction industry slowed to a stop in early 2022. Let me read that again. The shortage is just something the big companies make up, says Jacqueline Jolly, who entered trucking alongside her husband as their work in the construction industry slowed to a stop in early 2020. By late 2022, they were homeless and scrambling to pay off their bills. Their story is interesting, so y'all just stick along. Booms and busts in the trucking industry have been around since 1980, when the industry was deregulated and rates between set markets were no longer guaranteed. This bust has been especially painful because it comes after a high in which rates were skyrocketing and people flooded into the industry. What happened in the middle of 2020 was unprecedented and is still playing out in the market today in terms of the number of trucks that entered the market, says Dean Croak, principal freight analyst at DAT Freight and Analytics. In June 2020, there were 241,835 registered for hire carriers with a gross vehicle rate of 10,000 pounds and over, according to DAT's data. By July 2023, there were 475,371, a jump of 96%. That's a lot of truckers, getting into this industry. That's a lot. That's a lot of owner operators. A few things happened to create the rush of drivers. As global demand for goods entered into as global demand for goods created in the early 2020 at the onset of the pandemic, the price of diesel plummeted, making it more affordable to run a trucking business. Government loans helped trucking companies survive the slowdown, and then by mid 2020, as Americans started buying goods again, freight rates started climbing. Companies paying $1.85 a mile in early 2020 were paying $3.10 a mile by late 2021, Croak says. This motivated people who had never been in trucking before to jump into the field. It also inspired drivers who were working for larger trucking companies to get their own trucks so they could become independent owner operators and work for themselves, he says. So yeah, let's take a look at the numbers. As far as the new entrants have poured into the trucking industry, the number of interstate for hire freight carriers in the U.S., that number is high. You see it from 2019 all the way to, where we are now. So yeah, that close to 500,000, But some of this boom was a mirage. Companies worried about shortages ordered more goods than they needed, creating temporary jobs for truckers to bring those goods to them. Sometimes companies would fill trucks up halfway and send them to warehouses rather than delivering an order late, creating an inflated sense of demand for trucks. During the boom times, you would have had to be very bad at the job to lose money, Croak says. Rates started plummeting in 2022, soon after Russia invaded Ukraine. At the same time, the price of diesel skyrocketed. Today, almost everyone in the spot market, drivers who aren't contracted with a particular company and thus can't add a fuel surcharge, is struggling. The spot market makes up about 15% of truckers. The flood of drivers into the market has now created a sure fate of drivers who brokers and trucking companies can play off one another, driving rates lower and lower. Let me read that one more time. Today, almost everyone in the spot market, drivers who aren't contracted with a particular company and thus can't add a fuel surcharge, is struggling. The spot market makes up about 15% of truckers. The flood of drivers into the market has now created a sure fate of drivers who brokers and trucking companies can play off one another, driving rates lower and lower. Keep that in mind. Jacqueline Jolly lived this boom and bust cycle. At first, when she and her husband entered the business in 2020, she said they got loads that paid as much as $4 or $5 a mile. Diesel prices were so low and rates were so high that the couple decided to take out a loan and buy a second truck for $80,000 and hire another driver. Let's continue to read. Like I told you, that this story is interesting. Things were good for a while. Then their situation quickly changed. Diesel prices jumped from $2.50 a mile to $5.99 a mile. No, diesel prices jumped from $2.50 a gallon, my mistake, to basically $6 a gallon, and rates started falling. A load from New York to Texas that would have netted them $4,500 in early 2021 was making only about $1,900 by 2023. The couple got so behind on their truck payments that they had to give the second truck back. But even with just one vehicle, they struggled to earn enough money to pay rent and feed their 4 children. When the rates went down, that really killed us, she says. We were like, what the heck? We can't survive off this. The couple gave up their apartment in Poughkeepsie, New York, and lived out of a motel as they tried to keep up with insurance, repairs, and personal expenses. But the cost proved too high, and they ultimately sold their last truck in the spring of 2023 and returned to the construction industry. The same truck that they bought for $80,000 now goes for around $30,000, in part because interest rates are so much higher today. Jolly says the family still has bills out of our eyeballs, including $15,000 in unpaid tolls. Thousands of truckers are experiencing the same boom and bust. We certainly hear from many that are feeling the impact of the current overcapacity that exists in trucking. There's lots of competition among lots of truckers for not enough freight, said Todd Spencer, president of the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, OOIDA. This could create a problem for anyone who drives on highways. It's the big companies who are most able to weather the storm because they can negotiate fuel surcharges and because they have the cushion to pay for unexpected repairs. But it's also the big companies that often employ the newest drivers and the ones with the least experience on the road. This makes driving more dangerous for everyone. In 2021, for example, 4,714 people died in crashes involving large trucks, a 14% increase from 2019. When a large truck and the passenger vehicle crash, it is almost always the occupants of the passenger vehicle who are killed. In one highly publicized incident, a truck driven by a new driver caused a 28-pound pileup that left 8 dead in Colorado. The driver later said he had never been taught to navigate mountain passes. The message during the pandemic about a truck driver shortage contributed to the overcapacity. The American Trucking Association repeatedly said that the industry was short 80,000 drivers, and the Biden administration added fuel to the fire, launching a trucking action plan in late 2021 that tried to draw more drivers into the industry. That included a pilot program that allows 18 to 21-year-olds to drive trucks. The problem that much of trucking has is that they can't retain drivers, Spencer says. This doesn't indicate the problem is the workers. This indicates the problem is with the job. Now that truckers are competing against one another, driver rates down, the narrative about a truck driver shortage has disappeared for now. Trucking goes in cycles, though, so Croak says it's sure to return. The amount of freight being moved is roughly equivalent to what it was in 2019, which itself a slow year. Croak predicts that the U.S. is about three quarters of. Let me get back to it. All right, here we go. Croak predicts that the U.S. is about three quarters of the way through the current freight recession. As more independent contractors leave the market, though, bringing their debt with them, the cycle will bottom out, he says. There will once again be demand for truckers, rates will start to rise, and the message that there's a shortage of people willing to drive trucks will rear its head once again. So this is all about saving. Because during those times, during the pandemic, a lot of people were getting paid, especially, owner operators, if you were in this industry, you were still getting paid. And even company drivers that, if you were still, there were still company drivers that were still getting paid, during the times of the pandemic. So trucking didn't slow down, Was it a shortage? It was always a shortage in any industry. But yeah, it was a shortage, and then you had a lot of people, get into this industry, and, you got some in here, that are still surviving and thriving, and you got some that they were thriving, but they couldn't survive, because of their own, issues. The biggest thing about this industry that you have to realize is that you got to save money. You got to pay down debt, have your emergency savings fund, invest in other things, and, if you want to splurge on yourself, do it within moderation. Like I said, this lady and her family in this article, it was going good. It was going well for them, and all of a sudden, the money just got too good. You felt like you need to get a second truck. With that, you got to get a new driver and you got to get more insurance. And now you got a loan to pay. She didn't know that the industry was going to flatline out, but it did. It did. Unfortunately for her and her family, they didn't have anything put aside, to weather the storm. And unfortunately, they lost it all. They lost it all. So the main thing, is saving. Don't get in this rat race of thinking that you got to have the new thing because you're making new money. Save, save, save. Pay off your bills, and don't continue to put yourself, in a bind where you don't have to. Continue to save. Continue to put your money, invested in things that that matter. But that's all that I have, right now. I'm gonna share the article, in the description. Y'all make sure y'all like, share, and subscribe to the video. Subscribe to the channel, share the video. Let me know what you all think. Owner operators, company drivers. Let me know what you think about this article. Is the trucking industry, is it saturated? Let me know what you feel. But until next time, y'all be safe.